I'm Dr. Katrin Ramsey from Russell Sage College. I've met some of you before with my students. Tonight we're going to talk about integrative health, the whole person health that I want you all to have as we all get older. So first slide is basically the underlying theme to tonight's presentation, which is um, you really have to take some of your love and turn it into your own self-love, right? Enough self-love to live a healthy lifestyle. And there's a lot of science now behind this that we didn't used to have. So let's go on a journey and see what we know now that we didn't know 10 or 15 years ago about how to age healthily. So this particular study, this is where it all started. So I don't know how many of you have heard about the blue zones, but there are parts of the world where people are super healthy and have super longevity. So they live into their hundreds and they have really great quality of life. And so back in 2014, somebody started to take a closer look at those populations to see what they had that the rest of the world doesn't have. And some of it started with this Danish twin study, which was a long time ago, 1996. But what they determined from this study of twins, pairs of twins, is that only 20% of how long the average person lives is determined by genetics, and 80% of longevity is dictated by lifestyle. So I just want you to sit and think about that or digest that thought for a second. 80% of longevity, and I would argue since longevity is directly related to health and disease processes, right? 80% of health and disease processes is probably dictated by lifestyle as well. So this is the blue zone map, and I left my notes on the bottom of the page just so I can share them with you. And if you want to read along, you're happy to read along. But in 2004, a man named Dan Butner wanted to figure out all the aspects of lifestyle and environment that led to longevity. And so he teamed up with National Geographic and the National Institute on Aging, and he found 5 specific demographically defined areas with the highest percentages of centenarians, so people in 100 that were doing really well, that were thriving. And so we're going to go over a little bit about these cultures, and then we're going to go over a few of the things that are recommendations that come from the study of these people. So the first area is in Italy. This is beautiful Sardinia. It's a tiny little island off the coast of Italy. This is where the world's longest lived men can be found. I actually am traveling to Sardinia in May for my anniversary, so I'm very excited to end up in the place, one of the top 5 healthiest places in the world to live. The population is basically pretty rural. It's a community of shepherds, and they walk 5 miles a day in the mountain doing their shepherd thing. And their diet, because they're shepherds, is primarily plant-based and has whole grain bread, beans, garden vegetables, and fruits. And they only really have meat on Sunday, once a week, or for a special occasion. So that's the first area. The next area is Okinawa, Japan. Well, actually, Okinawa is a South Pacific island where the world's longest lived women can be found. And all the individuals in this particular society are supported by a social network. And I'm not sure how to pronounce this, but I call it a moai. But when you're born, you are sort of placed in a secure social network. When by the time you get to like be 5 years old, and it's 4 or 5 other people that you spend the rest of your life spending time with, right? So it gives you financial support, emotional support. They're very committed social networks, and they meet daily. And as you get older in these social networks, if you don't show up for the meeting, the other four come out and find you, right? They put on their kimonos and they walk across the village to check on you. And so this inherent social group serves both to help you along the way and also to be like a safety net in case your health is failing. They also, when they're meeting daily and as they get older, not certainly not when they're 5 years old, but when they're older and they meet daily, they drink sake and they gossip. So they have some fun. So it's social, but it's also a very supportive place. The next region is Nicoya, which is in Costa Rica. And this particular location demographic has a really uh, strong cultural value of faith, family, and plan de vida. And so plan de vida is reason to live, like raison d'etre. A couple of these locations have that very specific, purposeful thought process of how you live your life. In Nicoya, they avoid processed food consumption, which we do not do in this country, and they eat a lot of antioxidant-rich tropical fruit. And they actually have pretty magical water there that has a lot of calcium and a lot of magnesium. And those two minerals in their water helps combat their heart disease processes. It gives them really great, strong bone health, good bone density. So we know calcium is an important part for prevention of osteopenia or osteoporosis. So that's that location. And then we have Ikara, and a little more urban. You can tell from this picture, not as rural, but it's an Aegean island. And they also eat a Mediterranean diet, mostly fruits and vegetables, whole grains, beans, potatoes, olive oil. What they do in this culture, which is not necessarily in all the other places that I mentioned, but they decompress. With a daily downshift, they call it a downshift or a mid-afternoon rest period. So kind of like a siesta. Residents in this particular region live 8 years longer than US residents. And interestingly, they experience 20% less cancer, 50% less rate of heart disease, and most importantly, the smallest amount of dementia anywhere in the world. Right? So these people who live in that particular area don't have Alzheimer's. They're not getting aging dementia. And we know we have a big problem with that in this country. What's special about this population is that they fast. They fast often. They fast for religious reasons. So they fast up to 150 days per year as part of their religion. And so I know you've had somebody come talk to you about fasting, but not necessarily like from this perspective of these blue zones where now we are starting to put a lot of pieces together, how to age better, how to integrate healthy living into the aging process. And then finally, we did find one back when this study was originally performed in California. So we did have one area of the United States, Loma Linda, California, and it is an Adventist community. So here we go. Look at that. You know, I'm in the right place for this talk. Their community follows what would be considered a biblical inspired vegan diet with leafy greens, nuts, and legumes, beans again. And they definitely have a Sabbath, a true Sabbath. So I grew up on Sunday was a day of rest. Sunday was a day to go to church. Sunday was a day to spend with family. And I know for a lot of people in the United States, culturally, like people are working, or now we have all these stores, people are shopping, people aren't necessarily decompressing or downshifting on Sunday like we used to. But in this particular area of California, they are, and they are doing really well. They're thriving. And so my little note at the bottom of this is this particular community outlives the average American by a decade. So religion for that demographic is serving them nicely. So if we look at all those things that I talked about, they went back and decided like what are really the most important things from these communities and these cultures and these locations, these blue zones, that would help other people, right? So the first thing, the first recommendation is to move naturally. And so they found that most of us live and operate in about a 5 mile radius. And certainly the environment that you're operating in is super important. So places that have those trails to walk on or places that have safe sidewalks to walk on are better environments because the environment will entice you to get out and move. If you grow your own garden, and you tend your own garden, you're going to be out moving. And so they didn't really find that these people were, going to the gym and lifting weights. Like my students and I have given plenty of presentations where we have to do strength training and we have to do flexibility training and we have to do cardiovascular fitness training. These people just move. They just go out and move without much mechanical device help. So they're not using, electric or gas lawnmowers or doing push lawnmowers, or when they're doing housework and yard work, they're not putting out their little shark vacuum that vacuums the house for them. They're cleaning their house, right? So they're just on a day-to-day basis, not as sedentary as the average American is, right? And a lot of us, the busier we get with work, the more we have hired people to do landscapers to do our yard work, or we have all these other people, house cleaner coming in to help us clean our house, keep our house clean. So we're not, we're sitting, but we're not really moving, and we're not enticed to move very often. So that was the first recommendation. And the next recommendation is to really take a step back and figure out what your sense of purpose is. So in the Okinawa culture, it's called ikigai. I don't even know how to pronounce it, but why I wake up in the morning, right? And very similar to that Nikoyan Plana de Vida. Do you know what your sense of purpose is? And if you do know what your sense of purpose is in life, they found that it's worth up to 7 years more of healthy extra life expectancy. And so, it's kind of interesting. Like when I look at, I'm a physical therapist, and I look at all the health promotion and wellness and all the exercise-based things I recommend for people. I don't often, as homework, assign somebody, go home and figure out what your purpose in life is. But if I wanted to make them healthier, if I wanted to help them with their aging processes, I probably should have this conversation with them. You probably should have this conversation with family members and friends. And so, it's one thing to say, sit and meditate, or, sit and pray and try and determine what your life purpose is. But fortunately for us, there's these two gentlemen, Richard Leider and Dave Shapiro, recently published a book about the path of purposeful aging, right? And so they have a couple things, a couple prompts, a couple ways to try and assist if you don't know what your life's purpose is or your life path. Try and figure out first, what are your gifts? What are your personal attributes? What do you love to do? And then try and figure out how best to share your gifts and make, while you're sharing your gifts, meaningful contributions to others, right? And so that's the first step in the process. It's a great book to read. It's not a bad read. It's a pretty quick read. And then from there, after you figure out what your gifts are and how you might be able to share them with others, then who is it that you really want to help? And or like think about what pain, suffering, or injustice or unhappiness have you observed that you feel compelled to address in a positive change manner. And so certainly we have a lot of that going on in the world right now. And the more of us that stick around to do this work, that stay healthy to do this work as we age, that integrate holistic wellness behaviors and patterns, the more people that we can help and also help them get better and healthier. So, and the last part of illuminating the path to your own life purpose is, what are you willing to sacrifice for? So, you really have to make the commitment to name, and then live your purpose, right? Courage and conviction, and then continuously throughout your days, stay in that purposeful alignment of what you've decided your path is. The next thing that they recommend for all of us is downshifting. I don't know about you, but for me, downshifting is the first thing to go. The busier I am, the more deadlines I have. Will skip a walk or skip a yoga class, or jump, wake up in the morning instead of just daydreaming or meditating in the morning. I'll jump out of bed and try and do one more PowerPoint presentation before I hit the road to go drive down to Troy. But they really encourage that you pause daily. And so these cultures that I talked about previously in Japan, they pause daily to recognize and reflect on their ancestors, which I really love. I love that because I think ancestors are important and the connection to ancestors are important. In Loma Linda, they set aside dedicated daily time for prayer. In Icarians enjoy that daily siesta, and then Sardinians, their downshift time is usually happy hour. We're going to talk about that a little bit more. They have a very special wine in Sardinia that has tremendous health benefits, like much better than our wine here in the United States, a specific grape. But the basic message behind this slide, and we've talked about this in some of our other presentations, is chronic stress leads to chronic inflammation, chronic challenges to the immune system, and inevitable health decline, physical decline, mental health decline, and then disease processes, right? So Blue Zone methods for managing stress are recognizing that we can't just always be driving 100 miles an hour with our foot on the gas pedal, that there really has to be a downshift, and not just a downshift vacation once a year, not just a downshift, one weekend a month, but a downshift, a daily downshift moment where you take time just to relax a little bit and not operate in that sympathetic nervous system where you're always stressed and unable to relax, and your immune system is really fighting hard against all of the stress hormones that are coursing throughout your body. This one I find really super wonderful. I've sort of heard versions of this in the past. So, like, I am not a nutritionist, I'm a physical therapist. I do know some things about nutrition, but there is what's considered 80% rule, and this is from Japan, and they call it hara hachi bu. So, they have a mantra before they sit down. They say hara hachi bu. And really, what hara hachi bu said before a meal reminds them to stop eating when the stomach is at 80% capacity, right? So not eating past the point of fullness, and that 20% gap of not being hungry and feeling full could be the difference between losing weight, gaining weight, and also has been linked to longevity, right? And so not only don't overstuff your stomach at meals, or don't listen to the cues of satiety. When you're hungry, you eat. When you're not hungry, you don't eat. But also, the smallest meal of the day in the Blue Zone occurs in the late afternoon or early evening, right? So for a lot of us, for me, by the time I get home from Troy on Mondays, I'm eating dinner at 8 o'clock at night, and then I fall into bed at 9:30 at night. And these are not the best times to be consuming nutrients for healthy aging. And what's beneficial about this is if it's an early afternoon small meal, then the metabolism of the residents of the Blue Zone areas are basically fasting until morning. So, if you eat your last small meal at 4 o'clock and you don't get up and eat breakfast till 7 o'clock, that's a lot of hours of fasting, right? 7 to 7 is 12. I'm not so good at math, but you guys can do the math on that one. So, we're going to talk a little bit more about fasting in the upcoming slides. And then the next recommendation from all this research in these healthy populations is diet should be a plant slant for sure, right? So everything that's beans, and building blocks of like fruit, vegetables are what you really want to have most of on your plate. And meat consumption occurs only about 5 times a month in most of the populations. Um, and meat portion sizes are 3 to 4 ounces, which you know is the size of a deck of cards. And so I don't know where you've been to out to dinner, but every time I go out to dinner, the protein is the size of like 4 cards on the plate or 3 cards on the plate, right? So definitely we should be taking some doggy bags home, and definitely we should be measuring in terms of ounces how much meat consumption we have. Oh, I did have something. When they do eat meat in these countries, the meat that they eat the most of is pork, and not beef, which is that's not necessarily true in the United States. But so now we're up to alcohol consumption. Crazy, right? People residing in 4 out of 5 of all the blue zones, not Loma Linda because they're Adventist, did I say that right? They drink alcohol moderately and regularly. Like this is mind blowing for me because most of the research I've ever read is like, it's excess calories, and, it stresses your liver and it's not healthy to drink. But um, moderate drinkers outlive non-drinkers, according to these people that they studied. And what they considered a moderate drinker would be 1 to 2 glasses per day, preferably of Sardinian Cano wine, because it has 2 to 3 times the level of artery scrubbing flavonoids as other wines. So it has really great antioxidant properties. And when they're drinking, they're not closet drinking and they're not binge drinking. They're always together with friends and or with food, right? So there's this community experience along with the alcohol consumption that seems to probably negatively combat any negative effects of alcohol usage. So they also say that saving up daily alcohol consumption to binge drinks is not endorsed. It's not a health promoting behavior. But having a couple glasses of Sardinian Cano wine every day seems to help these people live a little bit longer. Um, as a result of this Blue Zone study, the thing that they really, really recommend is to belong, right? Um, 5 out of the 263 100-year-old people that they interviewed as part of this research belonged to some faith-based community, and denomination had no impact. It was just having faith. So going to church, spending time with church communities. If you go 4 times a month, it will add 14 years of life expectancy. So, hallelujah, amen to that. 4 times a month isn't that much. That's just once a week on a Sunday. So, really will help with your longevity. And again, I found all this research quite fascinating because the things that I harp on, the exercise, the flexibility, are not necessarily everything that we need to consider. So having faith to rely on, or having a community of faithful friends to spend time with, is really beneficial for your health. And then the last recommendation, there's like 2 more, is put your loved ones first, right? So all the residents in the blue zones prioritize family and family relationships. And all the aging or infirm family members live nearby or with other family members. So there's really this multi-generational situation where the elderly people can contribute to the younger family members' growth. So I have a note on the bottom of this slide, really interesting side point to this statement, right, is that the children who live with elderly family members have lowered disease and mortality rates. Meaning, if you're living with, multi-generational family, your children will be healthier. And also then those people who are raised in multi-generational family situations usually commit to a life partner, which is beneficial having a life partner can add 3 years of life expectancy to your life, and then more likely to have children, and more likely also then to continue the cycle of caring for older aging parents when the time comes. So really a wonderful thing to have the perspective and also the caretaking and the sharing of family members. And in this country, a lot of that is left by the wayside. If some people are far away, my parents live a long way away, 7.5 hours away. It's very hard to caretake them at that distance. I really wish they were in my house or in my backyard. And the last thing that they think is super important is find the right tribe, right? So if you're in a blue zone, you're going to have a social circle that support health promoting behaviors, right? So we talked about those moais the Okinawans belong to, our support circles. But we also know that um, in terms of, there's a saying, your tribe is your vibe. So in terms of the tribe that you pick, if you have a tribe that's, people who are unhappy or people who are lonely, all those things, smoking, obesity, happiness, loneliness are contagious, right? So try and collect friends along the way that are like-minded souls, right? So like-minded souls that are going to have healthy meals with you, or like-minded souls that are going to take little rests with you. So for me, my tribe is, my faculty at Russell Sage. We all are on the mission to help the next generation of physical therapists succeed and be kind and compassionate caregivers. But then the group that I mostly hang out with is my yoga studio. So I have a group of yoga friends who are all very like-minded in terms of caring for one another, and being empathetic and compassionate and supportive. So it's a wonderful place to go. This is just a cute little reminder slide about, well, who is my tribe? I don't even know what my vibe is. I don't even know what their vibe is. I don't know what my tribe is, but you found your tribe when you are inspired and energized by them. So there's quite a few really great books about energy vampires, the people that you run into that just seem to suck your life force out of you, right? And not to surround yourself. You want to surround yourself with people that inspire you and energize you. You want to feel that your ideas and opinions matter. My daughter, when she was very young, came home from kindergarten and was talking about a young man that she just thought was really amazing. And she kept talking and talking and talking about him. And I went to meet him and see him, and I really couldn't pick him out. And he looked, just average, ordinary to me. And I said to my daughter, well, what is it about him that you really, really like? And she said, well, Mommy, he listens to what I have to say. And at that point, I had to laugh because she was 5 and much wiser than I was, in my late 20s and early 30s, that she knew, right? That somebody who listened to her and who took her opinion seriously was somebody that she wanted in her life, that made her feel good. You're motivated to share with them is another one. You feel accepted and appreciated. You feel nourished from the outside and the inside, and you can turn to them for help when you need it. They will advise you in a judgment-free zone if you have something to share. You usually share similar passions and beliefs. You're on the same wavelength. And, if you didn't have them in your life, it would be a big gap. So if you're looking for a tribe, you can put this little poster up on your mirror, and it'll help you navigate who those people are going to be. So we're going to turn, we talked about the places where people are healthy, and we talked about things that you want to think about, but there's really, based off this was 2014 research, the Blue Zone. Now there's a whole big expansion of this because it's great. We're also thankful and grateful and happy for the people who get to live in those communities in Sardinia and Loma Linda. But what we really want for the whole Earth population, the whole world population, is for everybody to be able to have that health quality of life and be able to take care of themselves and others better. So there's been some new and interesting research that I just wanted to share with you about what's going on for you to be healthier, and what's going on maybe for your community to be healthier. So In terms of diet, I know you've had a bunch of nutritionists come and talk to you, but the lessons learned from the Japanese diet is that there are very specific longevity promoting foods. Tofu, because it's soy, when you use it instead of meat, it will help lower your cholesterol and your triglyceride levels, which will is a wonderful thing for prevention of heart disease. Um, they have purple potatoes um, in Japan that are amazing, that have less ability to spike blood sugar. And they have brought those purple potatoes to the US, Japanese purple potatoes. But other things that they eat are brown rice, turmeric, shiitake mushrooms, seaweed, and bitter melons. Turmeric, I'm not a big fan of the taste of turmeric, but turmeric has like amazing properties. In the bottom, one of the key components of turmeric is that it's antioxidant, anti-cancer, anti-inflammatory agent, right? And so now they're saying that turmeric is wonderful for anti-aging. Um, Especially it will help you limit caloric intake. Turmeric is great for not overeating. And it also is wonderful for slowing the progression of dementia. So they think that maybe why the people in Japan don't have dementia or a high incidence of Alzheimer's is because of the turmeric. And they drink it in tea and they use it as spices and they put it on their foods. But so those are some of the things in the grocery store that perhaps, next time you're there, you can fill up your cart with a few of them or one or two. Brown rice I love. I usually do brown rice. I do something disgusting with brown rice. Sometimes I put peanut butter on brown rice and have it for lunch with an apple. But uh, mushrooms are also like amazing for immune system function promotion. So those are some things that you might want to think about while you're out grocery shopping and staying away from all those processed foods. I just included in this. This is for those of you that are like me. I have a terrible sweet tooth. Um, I blame my father because we used to stop at the bakery on the way to church every Sunday morning, and he let me get a chocolate eclair at 7 o'clock in the morning on Sunday on the way to church. But this is a great healthy dessert recipe or a healthy breakfast recipe, which is basically unsweetened almond milk. So it's plant-based, a little vanilla extract, a little maple syrup, a little cinnamon, and then you put chia seeds in it. And what the chia seeds do overnight or in a few hours, an hour in the refrigerator, they'll soak and it'll turn into kind of like a pudding consistency. And it's quite delicious. It's quite healthy. And then you can serve it with fresh strawberries. So that's maybe something you could try if you have that sweet tooth and you're trying to get away from a lot of sugar, and a lot of processed treats. Additional Blue Zone recommended foods, and this is straight out of the man who did the study, would be green or herbal teas, goat's milk, garlic, olive oil, barley and oats, nuts, beans and greens. So now this particular picture, you're probably thinking like, well, what does this have to do? This is more of a community thing. So this they found that sometimes, like when you live in an urban setting, there are places that you have to ambulate, or crossing a street, a busy crosswalk. There are places that you have to go that are much higher at risk for mortality because of the way people are driving, or just because it's a dangerous intersection, or because there's no visibility, or whatever there is. So they've done some really great work. This is a community in Passaic, that what you just saw, Passaic, New Jersey. And the quote is from the mayor of Passaic County, which is murals in streets reduce the velocity of vehicles and enhance the safety for those who are walking. So I know, I don't think it was last fall, but the fall before last, we were at a little health fair by you guys, and you're kind of like on a busy corner. So maybe think about an art initiative to help bring the community together. This particular project that I just showed you the picture of was funded by Bloomberg Philanthropies. So the funding came from this organization that funds projects like this. Great website to go to if you want to look at some of the projects. They've got tons of different projects. But this particular one involved 575 residents that came out, and it was installed fairly recently, a year ago. And it really didn't take a lot of materials. So paint with additive, so it stuck better, and sealer. It ended up being quite big in terms of square footage. And down at the bottom was the design cost, which was $3,000. The estimated labor cost was 14,802, but that was all volunteered. And the materials cost was that. So, yeah, so funding for that would be great. Or even if you don't have funding, maybe just someday getting a bunch of talented people together with like-minded that would make the surrounding environs to where you are in an urban setting a little bit safer is a good thing that you can do to help your community. So I have a little video. I know that you've learned about fasting, but I just think that this video is a great way to share this particular man who learned about fasting and autophagy, was given the Nobel Prize in Physiology of Medicine in 2016. So we'll watch this for just it's a 3-minute video clip. Oops, maybe I thought I'd watch it. Maybe I can't. Well, if I can't play it, you'll have to, I'll have to send it to you later. But it talks about the process of autophagy is basically where cells deconstruct. It's kind of like cleanup. They break down, they clean up, and then they rebuild with the solid, better version building blocks. And it's a process that is really enhanced by fasting. So we'll go to the next slide. Fasting for 12 to 24 hours triggers that process, right? And it's a good process. It's a process that was designed to give us longevity, to give us better health. And so, scientists now feel pretty strongly that fasting plus that process of autophagy gives you longer life and healthier life, right? And it helps those cells begin a new repair renewal cycle. And we also know that fasting has benefits for blood sugar control, reduction of inflammation, weight loss, and improved brain function. And again, it can be initiated either by fasting or by exercise activity. And because, again, I'm not a nutritionist, I do have a couple, caveats or warnings. So one is that fasting should always be done under physician supervision. So if you're thinking about really legitimately fasting, longer fasts, like entire days or entire weeks, you definitely should get a physical and clearance from your physician. But probably the most effective way for us to take advantage of autophagy is not necessarily to fast, just to stop eating at 7 o'clock and not start eating until 7 o'clock in the morning, right? You're effectively fasting for 12 hours and you're going to get that nice autophagy process, which will help give you neuroprotective effect on the central nervous system in the brain. And if we don't have that autophagy process, then you can get neurodegenerative disease, which is what we were talking about, the mental health decline, the cognition changes that are often associated with aging in the elderly population. There is a note on the bottom of this slide. The director of the Longevity Institute at the University of South California in LA recommends most people eat 2 meals a day if they have trouble with overeating. And again, so if you stop at 4, there you go, I did the math for myself. If you stop at 4 in the afternoon and that's your small meal, boy, you're going to be hungry when you wake up at 7 and you're going to have that big breakfast, but you've effectively had a 15-hour fast. And so, yeah, even if you don't eat till 7 o'clock, there is some benefit to just staying away from anything of caloric intake after that last meal, and definitely trying to slant your calories earlier rather than later while you're up and about and moving around. And then another thing, which I found quite interesting because I didn't really, I was not aware of this, is that aging perspective and beliefs impact your health or impact your overall healthy aging process, right? So my question is, how do you think about aging, right? So if, words in your mind crop up like decrepit, incompetent, dependent, senile, like those are all pretty negative associations with aging, as opposed to wise, alert, accomplished, and creative. And so they've done some really great and interesting research about negative beliefs about aging cause people to have more increased stress later in life and also cause them to have less healthy behaviors. So, like if you have negative beliefs about aging, then perhaps you won't exercise, or if you have negative beliefs about aging, perhaps you won't eat a healthy diet. And then positive beliefs about aging facilitate really healthy behavior patterns, help people become more active, more resilient, and have a stronger will to live. And there is a great book about this. And this was research that was done by Becca Levy out of Yale University. And people with positive aging beliefs live longer, a median of 7.5 years compared to those who have negative beliefs. Um, exposing and this is like a really important thing, exposing people to positive descriptions of aging can improve their memory, gait, balance, and will to live, right? So if you have maybe a congregation member that comes in and has some negative beliefs about aging, just talking to them with some positive descriptions about aging can help them. Think about this: memory, gait, balance. Gait and balance are my wheelhouse as a physical therapist. And I do try and positively talk to people, but I don't necessarily target positive talking about aging because I myself, I'm 64, and I have some negative thoughts that creep into my mind sometimes about aging. But again, it's very important that you just start to reframe, what bias you might have about aging or what bias you might have about the end of your life. Another way that you can improve your age beliefs is to spend some time in intergenerational contact. So, if everybody in your friend group is your age, find some older friends, right? Or if everybody is older, find some younger friends. And then they did recommend actually journaling, taking a week, and every time you sort of saw or ran into an elderly person, do some journaling, jot down some words that come to mind, and then take a step back at the end of the week and think about like, were there other views that you could have taken or other words you could have used that might have been more positive when you were looking at that person, right? Or other descriptors that would be more health promoting for that patient and also for you, for the way that you're thinking. So again, in this particular book, this researcher wanted us to not only just journal and figure out where our own inherent biases are, but to actually challenge negative age beliefs in public, right? So that's hard to do, to stand up and say like, that person's not old, that person's not decrepit, that person is aging like a fine wine from Sardinia. So getting towards the end of this talk. So this is kind of just an overview slide. It picked 3, not 5, but if you look at this, there's definitely that confluence of diet and family, and then constant moderate physical activity, but not necessarily hitting the gym, social engagement. Also, sunshine always helps, gardening always helps. Empowered women is also another great thing that helps with healthy aging, surrounding yourself with empowered women. That wine that has that polyphenol content is still over there in Italy, and I'm sure I'll be drinking some of that in May. But also taking a step back, taking those downshifting, no time urgency moments in your life are really going to serve you well, and not being culturally isolated, right? So those are the kind of things that we're looking for. And this is just from the Blue study. This is just a nice those are all the things that I talked about. Really a nice printout. I would encourage all of you, I have on my reference slide that comes next, how you can go and get more information about this. They have cookbooks and recipes, and they have all kinds of articles to read and really interesting things about what's going on in the community and where there's now blue projects going on in this country and how they're doing. And a lot of them are really relatively small changes in terms of not allowing a bodega to put candy like first thing when you walk in the door, but not to have like fresh fruit and vegetables, or not having colleges serve sugary beverages. I mean, there's a lot of small steps, but move naturally, have a purpose, downshift, don't overeat, make sure your diet is a healthier, more plant-based diet. If you're going to drink, it should be moderate consumption with friends and with social support. And then again, find the people that you fit in with and support you, and then definitely support your loved ones and make a big effort to take care of them and find a place where you feel like you have a great sense of belonging, like church. So there's a couple additional references for you. That's that book. The Blue Zone actually has a 3-minute test that you all can take. Kind of fun. I gave the link for it here. It's the Blue Zone's Vitality Test. It's 3 minutes and it's free. And when this was mine, I did it yesterday. So I'm 64. And it's kind of a cute report. So it tells you like how long I'll probably be healthy. So looks like I might have another 20 years of being healthy. I could live up to, my life to age 90. My potential life expectancy is, much longer than that. But it also says, hey, you know what? If you want five more years of healthy life, if you want to make it to 90 healthy, we have some recommendations based on that 3-minute questionnaire that I filled out online. So I would encourage you to go fill it out and see what it has to say. This last slide, I happen to absolutely adore old cemeteries. I think they're wonderful places to reflect on life, and they're usually beautiful and they're usually peaceful. And I love some of the artwork on the older tombstones. But this is really the essence of this talk tonight, which is, this woman made it to 100, and she lived for others. So she knew her purpose. I don't know who she was, but I admire her. I get a little bit of goosebumps. She lived for others. She knew her purpose, and she went out and rocked it. And probably knowing her purpose and helping others helped her get to that age of 100. And that was in 1944, when life expectancy was much lower than it is now for us. So that's it. I'm going to stop screen sharing and open it up for some questions if anybody has questions.
Thank you so much. That was great. I can't wait to share it with everybody.
Interesting, right? It's, I am an integrative medicine practitioner. So I'm trained in Reiki, I'm trained in reflexology, I'm trained in manual lymphatic drainage. I have a skill set of what I consider integrative medicine, taking care of people. But this is much a broader painting of
Yeah.
how to stay healthy, which I really, really love. And I really love that it tied into, going to church is awesome because you have a congregation that comes to church, right? And gosh, I didn't know there was science behind that it's gonna, make you healthier and help you live longer.
So, in the fall, you often bring students, and you just modeled like what they're going to be doing in the fall, like doing all the research on the different areas. Was there anything that surprised you as you did research for this presentation?
Well, a couple things like the alcohol thing, I was a little surprised at. I was like, wow, really? That surprised me a little bit. I think what mostly surprises me is that it's been since 2014. Well, you saw that first genetic research in 1994. So it's been a long time. Since 2014, we knew this about these blue zones. There's a great documentary that you can watch on it. That's probably on Netflix. But we've known about these places for a long time. And, what surprises me is that here we are, more than 10 years later. And when you go on the Blue Zone website, you can see the little places where they're starting to tick the needle and make a difference in different populations in the United States. But we collectively, as a country, and some of it's just the medical system. The medical system is its own beast, where pop a pill or have a surgery, or it's there's a lot of money and profitability in medicine, and it would seem like some of the things that we could do are relatively inexpensive. And it's shocking to me that more work hasn't been done based off this research, because every single thing, if you look at the projects that they have about, painting an intersection and decreasing the amount of accidents and decreasing the amount of pedestrian fatalities and injuries. I mean, it's just incredible. We have the knowledge, and we're not doing what we should with it. A couple places are doing it on small scale, but we should really be doing it everywhere in this country.
One of the questions I had was about um, the field of medicine and whether you see, if you're comfortable commenting on this, whether you see more of a shift because there's such a market to sort of support these lifestyles. It's been capitalized, if you will. And but I don't know that the profession itself or all aspects of the professions that maybe the allied health more so than the, you know, has has shifted in the same way to say, I was fortunate to have a doctor. I'll just put who ended up changing her specialty, during COVID, who my cholesterol was high. And she knelt down beside me and said, "Are you going to exercise so that we don't have to medicate you?" Right? And I really appreciated that, that it was like, I'm like, oh my goodness, my doctor's kneeling next to me to force me to be healthy, and I really appreciated that. But I knew that that was a special moment that I might not get that across the board. It'd be like, here, take this statin and.
Right. I no, and I mean, I would say she's a kind of an outlier. I would say most of medicine is still like not necessarily embracing more conservative management. And again, because pharmaceutical industry is one thing and surgical revenue is one thing, right? There's a lot of big money to be made. And I actually kind of feel bad because a lot of the integrative medicine stuff, I had a whole nother lecture about integrative medicine that I normally give my students about what are some forms of integrative medicine, besides Reiki or cupping or acupuncture. I mean, there's a lot of research that shows yoga, how beneficial all these things are. Craniosacral therapy, just there's so many of them, and we're getting really good research about them, but they're very expensive. They're
Yes.
cost prohibitive, right? So like me giving another talk, like, yeah, please join a yoga studio, or please go get a massage, or whatever, please go do this or that, like, it's not accessible. I mean, I honestly, I do, have a year-long membership at a yoga studio, but it's a lot of money. And I,
Yep.
I get it discounted because sometimes I teach classes there, so they'll give me a discount. But for the average person, I'd
Mhm.
rather, that your health insurance would pay for, whatever you want to do for fitness for you, right? A membership
Yeah.
for everybody who wants to, whatever you want to do. You want to just walk in a forest bathe in the woods, or whatever you want to do with the money, or if you want to go to yoga, or if you want to go to massage therapists or whoever. I wish we could spend our money proactively like that a little bit, right? And we can't for the most part. Every once in a while, I run into somebody whose insurance company will pay for a massage for them, and I'm like,
Mhm.
wow, that's blessed.
Mhm.
That's wonderful, right? But the rest of us, $100, $125,
Yeah. A month or
$150
yeah.
for self-care treatment that's going to boost your immune system, um, is not viable. It's not
Right.
sustainable. Maybe for your birthday, somebody gives it to you as a gift, but when you're trying to put food on the table, or put, gas in your or oil in your oil tank in the winter. Most people don't have that kind of money to spend. So I think like this presentation is great because it's like go out and get some old friends or go out and, journal, rethink how you're going to think about aging or, just stop eating at 7 o'clock. It's like these are all very most of these are affordable, accessible changes. Whether
Yeah,
you're in an urban setting or, whether you're out in the sticks of anywhere, they're all things that can, we can all do in a little bit and it'll make a difference. I'm not saying I'm going to add 10 years to your life. I don't know that I want 10 years added to my life, but I would like my life to be healthy, right? So there's
yeah,
nothing harder than watching an elderly family member decline cognitively, physically, right? These people in these blue zones, let me tell you, like they're bopping around younger than I am. Like it doesn't take
yeah,
too long to get out of a chair, you know?
yeah. I have so many questions. One is, you mentioned the little steps, and I'm thinking about someone who's like working three jobs to make ends meet, and all of the least expensive foods are in the middle, which are also the most unhealthy foods versus the produce on the outskirts, right? And so what would you say to that person who, like, what baby steps?
Oh, I would say find a community garden. Like I don't know if you guys have any property on your church property, but like
We don't.
somebody put some boards up and somebody like collectively have a community garden, right? They're great. And sometimes
Yeah,
farmers markets are great, right? Farmers markets are a great way to shop. And the local farmers market in Saratoga takes SNAP tokens. Most
yeah.
farmers market
And
takes SNAP,
Schenectady does too, yeah,
right? So I
yeah.
would be like, shop at the farmer's market before you go to the grocery store, right?
Mm,
And then again, you can start very small with like, okay, I eat meat every day. Like maybe this week I'm gonna have one vegan night, and maybe the next week you'll have two vegan nights, right? And where you'll find a couple. Sometimes vegan recipes for me are like, "Ugh, doesn't taste as good as anything else, but sometimes you find a good one. I found a good one on New York Times this past week that's like portobello mushrooms, and it has a tomato in it and mozzarella cheese and panko breadcrumbs, and they're, amazing. And tomato sauce. So it's like portobello mushroom lasagna, and you know what? It tastes just as good, and it's not hard to make because I used a jar of sauce, but not hard to make and good. So if you have a couple of those in your wheelhouse, you need to find those because if you try one and it's a lot of work and then it tastes terrible, then there's no incentive to ever do it
yeah,
again. You just get mad.
yeah. Yeah, I would say to folks who see this, come visit us on a Saturday afternoon at around 12:30 after our service ends. We have a vegetarian potluck. Yeah,
Oh,
and we
nice.
we used to have a group of young kids. They all rode bikes together around Lansingburg, and they knew when we had potluck. And so they would stop by, all of them, and then, it was like seven of them, right? And we got to know them. And then, when one was missing, we'd ask like, what's going on? And they'd give us all the information, right? Like, and
Like that little social group that they
yeah,
have, the
yeah.
Moyans,
And
right? The
they'd
little
come and
social
they'd
group.
stay for lunch. And we're like, come bring in your bikes so nobody steals them. And, and it was a good time. So I felt like that was a testament to how good the food was. Because these are like young boys,
Yeah,
teenage boys. Like,
yeah,
they're not gonna stay if the food's not good, right?
right. Yeah.
Um, so I experienced something today. So lately I've been going to spinning every morning, right? So here I am in this sort of enclosed room and I'm on this device. And today I walked with my kid in the neighborhood and I was like, huh, I am out of breath in a way that I thought I should not be because I've been exercising every morning. But here I am taking a nature walk and I am suffering,
Right.
I'm,
So
I'm
that
pushing
that
through
just
it.
goes back to these studies that say like get enticed to move in your 5 mile radius. Like that's really going to be great. And also probably too, sometimes when I have an elliptical in my basement. Sometimes when I'm like the TV's on, the elliptical's on, I'm not really not that into it. I do my 25 minutes, but it's not the same as, being out and, having a great conversation with somebody and maybe walking a little bit faster or having wind in your face that, makes you have to work a
Mhm.
little bit harder. Yeah. And for you, like walking was probably our motion, and our movement really gets heart rate up. So,
Yeah,
on a bike, you're just holding on and using your
yeah,
legs. That
yeah.
is mine.
It's been in a
Speaking
different
of, speaking
position.
of mechanical tools, let me just, I do have one of those vacuums. My husband gave it to me because I have dog hair all over my house.
Oh, the ones that go by themselves.
Yeah,
Yes, yes.
it's not the expense. It's not the, it's a shark or something. I don't know what it is, but it does make a lot of noise. But again, I'd be better off sweeping the floor myself or mopping the floor
Yeah.
myself.
So when you were showing all of the communities from the blue zones, I was like, you know, that walking in your natural environment, um, it the mechanical machine, those machines cannot replace sort of this natural movement that you have
Yeah,
that you
because you're
can
getting
do.
activation of your core, your obliques, your pelvis is rotating. There's a lot more going on walking than there is on a spin bike. I'm probably your legs are working really hard on a spin bike, but not necessarily your whole body on a spin bike.
Right. Yeah. In this particular class, they try to get every part though.
I
Um,
can't stand spin. That's my one. I can't stand spin. I don't know why. I just don't like spin. So,
oh,
I always tell everybody, you don't have to exercise what I want you to do, but you have to find something that you like to
find
do.
something. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, we're all over. There's some things I'm like, I can't do that. I'll fall off the bike. Right. So, um, uh, so this beauty project, this community beauty project, I was wondering, just looking at that picture, um, I don't know if this was in the article that you read. Was it just the mural, or is it that the community kind of owned that mural because so many of them were involved, and so it's
No,
like
no, they got funding from that Bloomberg philanthropy
she did,
organization.
yeah,
Got funding. So the artist got paid to like do the design, but then
okay,
the community themselves did the installation.
okay,
Yeah.
okay,
Yeah, and that they have a. You should go to that website, the Bloomberg philanthropic website, or maybe I got it from the Blue Zone. One of the two. I'll send you the link. But they have other projects too about in urban areas, murals and other art projects encouraging people to get out and move and walk around more. So
I I was thinking in terms of, you know, the reason why there would be less accidents and people would slow down, because I'm like, if there's so many community members who are installing this thing, then it's like it's the community's thing and word gets out like, don't you slow down, you don't mess up this area, it's ours, right?
yeah,
So
yeah.
I really love this idea of thinking about a way that we can sort of have the community own the space, like, you know, do something beautiful and it's
Mhm.
our thing, you know. And
And then
so
it enhances the safety and then also lifts the spirit, right?
yeah,
I
yeah,
mean, right?
yeah. Even having the lights on the little portico outside, neighbors have thanked us because they're like there's less negative things happening, and thank you so much for having the lights on. It was when wasn't working the other day, but you know, we're on that.
Yep.
Um, does timing, you did mention the 7 p.m. to 7 a.m., but does timing matter for optimum autophagy?
Yeah, well, I don't know how to pronounce it either. That's why I had the video because I thought they pronounced it very nicely on the video. It's interesting. I would refer you to a book that's written by a physician. It's called The Oldest Cure. Um, and it's all about fasting and it's all about other cultures, particularly European cultures, where people fast as part of wellness. Like, in Europe, they'll go to a spa and they'll fast, or they'll fast for a couple of days. They'll do medical fasting as a health preventative treatment.
Mhm.
And so that's a really interesting book. And he goes a little bit more into depth about, you can fast whenever you want. Like, so for me, um, just because of my lifestyle, like I'll try it. If I'm going to try and fast half a day, it'll be from like uh middle of the night till like middle of the afternoon, and then I eat at the end of the day. But I also know that it's better to do the reverse. So to have the big meal in the morning and eat less at the end of the day. But that just, for me, I'm not much of a breakfast person, so I don't really mind skipping
Love breakfast.
breakfast. But yeah, I mean, again, you have to check with your doctor, but that's a great book. And again, it's called The Oldest Cure. I forget who the author is, but it's a pretty great book about um why the medical society does not promote fasting. But they should.
Okay, okay,
Yeah.
okay.
Mhm.
Um, Back to mindset. There's so many things we can do to be holistically healthy. I find that um it becomes another stressor to, right? I
Yeah,
need
but
to get all of these things
that's
in to be wholly healthy. Right.
right. But that's like for me, that's like, oh my gosh, it's small steps. It's small changes and small steps. Yeah, like it is overwhelming for anybody to say like, okay, now I'm gonna like blow everything up and start all over and change. No, like I said, just a little bit at a time, and then before you know it, it'll snowball into more because you'll start to feel better. You'll have more energy, right? You'll notice the change. And then that'll incentivize you. In the beginning, I would say small steps for sure.
hmm hmm Do you find that like as generations are becoming more tech needy, right? And instant gratification needy, that it's becoming harder to get this message out, or is it I don't know. Are you finding like it's just harder to say slow it down
Yeah, for sure. I mean,
and
we just, as a culture, we have a very fast-paced lifestyle, and certainly other countries, Scandinavian countries, they don't work that hard. They all have like more vacation. They stop. They don't have technology at night and continue to work, right? So, it's somewhat a cultural disconnect in this country. I think the younger generation is trying to push back at it and change
yeah,
it back. But we'll see. We'll see what happens. There's got to be some change in this country because we're really not headed in the right direction
yeah,
for health. And then we're not even going to have like enough oncologists to treat the people who have cancer. We're not going to have enough gerontologists to treat our aging and infirm elderly population. I mean, it's just we're not headed in the right place. So
yeah.
something's got to change. Somebody's got to do something. But
I try,
every little bit counts, right? So if
yeah,
everybody just does one or two little things collectively, then maybe we'll start to shift.
yeah. Sometimes I travel for work and especially if I'm going to Asia, lunches are very long. And even though there's a lot of food, we're not stuffing ourselves and we're not consuming a lot of rice and noodles. Those come later if the folks sort of feel like you must be hungry because you haven't, right? But it's mostly like vegetables, fish. There'll be some meats there, but you don't have to eat meat. There are plenty of other things. And it's like you're eating in small portions the entire time.
Yeah,
And you're just engaging with each other for the long. So it ends up being like a 2.5 hour meal.
right.
And it's like,
Instead
it's
of like
important. We're gonna
of
stop and do
gulping,
this. Right. No one's
right,
rushing you
gulping.
to stop. And
Yeah,
I'm like, and I feel like I could climb a scale a wall, because I'm not, weighed down by the food.
right.
And I just want to just piggyback and say the importance of like shifting your mind to say, nope, I'm gonna pause and take my time with this food. I'm
Yeah,
not gonna eat it fast.
yeah.
And
I'm not so good at the haricha, whatever that statement was, 80% to my, I'm not so good at that, but I have found like not having a big dinner plate, like going from a 12-inch dinner plate to like a 9-inch dinner plate diameter is enough if I'm like, oh, I'm only gonna get one plate and then that's it, game over. Like
yeah,
again, you
yeah,
do fine. Like you just keep eating. Eating in front of the TV is the worst because you're not even paying attention. You're not even savoring the food. You're just mindlessly, putting food in your mouth and there's no enjoyment really. It's
Yeah.
over.
I'll share this quick story because I think it'll be beneficial for whoever watches this later. Um, so I was in Vietnam and I had given a presentation where I was standing maybe for 9 hours, right? And walking. And so I was exhausted, but I knew there was this vegan restaurant that was highly rated. And I was like, I'm gonna go. I'm gonna keep walking on these painful feet. I'm gonna go. So I go there and I'm like, I'm gonna review what I did. I'm gonna prepare for the next day. And the waitress comes and says, "What are you doing?" I go, "Well, I'm
Working.
I'm looking at my, you have not done enough work for the day that you must bring work and interrupt your food." And I was like, "No, you're right." And then she was apologizing profusely after. She was like, that was on call. No, no, no. She was like, because you're going to affect your
Digestion.
digestion because you're not being present for the meal. And each item is special. And it was this whole lecture she gave me, right? And I was like, thank you. So I really thanked her. As she's apologizing, I'm thanking. And so we had that moment. And I put it away. Nothing broke, nothing crashed. I really enjoyed my meal. It was a vegan restaurant that only exists in that one place because I really have tried to see if it's somewhere in the United States, but it's not. And so um, thank you so much for this and taking the time. And it just brought back that memory.
You're welcome. My pleasure. I said to my husband, you should come over here, hon. This is for us, this lecture tonight. He's
um,
like, oh, I'll hear it from the kitchen. That's what he said.
So to everyone who's going to see this, I think this is our last Tuesday with the doctor until the fall. We're planning to have a health fair. We're planning to have a back to school event. So, visit joyoftroy.org/doctor for this video and the rest of the videos. And just check out our page for other things that we have going on. And thank you again, Dr. Ramsey. It's
You're
always
welcome.
wonderful. Best wishes through finals week.
Yeah. All right.
All right.
From your mouth to God's ears for everybody. All
All
right.
right.
Be well. Bye.
Bye.